So quality always comes into play when you're talking about a machine readable code, and these IUID codes. And we need to make sure that as the handheld reader or the fixed reader scans that barcode, that we're consistently getting accurate reads. High quality reads are really essential to the success of this whole program. And that brings us to this discussion of validation and verification and ensuring that these quality standards are being met. Dan, can you bring some clarity here and explain the differences between these two processes, the validation and the verification?
Absolutely. These two steps actually, Dave, can sometimes be overlooked, but they are absolutely essential in order to ensure you're meeting MIL Standard 130 compliance with IUID labels. Validation and verification. Validation is simply checking the format or the data that you're using. Now, the cage code is pretty fixed. You're assigned a cage code from the DoD. You're not going to have any issue with that. But your part and serial number, in order to meet validation, can only be made up of either an alpha or numeric character. They can also have dashes or forward slashes. Those 4 character types are acceptable under MIL Standard 130. Any other type of character, such as a pound sign, ampersand, even a space, any other mark that you see on your keyboard, they are all considered non-compliant. If you have any of those in your part or serial number, you can do one of 2 things. You can simply remove it altogether, or you can replace it with a compliant character. Probably the majority of the time when a non-compliant character is in a part or serial number, it's removed and replaced with a dash. That's typically what is done. But you have the option to simply remove it. Now, verification, that's simply checking the legibility or the readability of the 2D data matrix barcode. Based on the data that you provide, the 2D is created, but according to MIL Standard 130, that must meet a certain grade quality level of either B or better. Now, to identify whether or not you're in compliance with validation and verification, a verifier must be used. That's the only tool out there that can be used to determine the compliance of validation and verification. So whether you're doing the labels yourself or whether you're outsourcing your IUID compliance requirement, the vendor that's providing you these labels should be providing you with a verification report that will show that validation and verification has been done on each label and that it has passed and met the compliance requirement. So it's more than just printing the label. Validation and verification is done to ensure the compliance.
Great, Dan. Awesome. So I do have a question here that's just come in. And it's asking about parts. Parts that are going in a valve that you'll never see. Do you still need to put an IUID label on a part?
Yeah, this is a question that I get every now and then, Dave. Not just valves. The question that I typically get is, well, if they're not going to see it, how do they know I'm doing it? Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah, it's possible they won't see it. I would not jeopardize it. If it's called out in your contract to mark a certain part, item, whatever it is, you should follow the compliance requirement because you don't want to expose yourself to a non-conformity. Meaning, let's say they are checking those valves and they do inspect them, or they are checking a particular asset, like engine parts, for example. Well, that part's going to be buried deep in the engine. They're not going to, quote unquote, see it. You're putting yourself at some exposure to risk for non-compliance. So while the chances are they won't check it, it's best to just simply follow the contract guidelines if they call out MIL Standard 130 to mark that part.
Great, great. Fantastic. So, and here we go. Here's a little bit more about this verification, you know, and talking about actually, you know, going through the verification process.
Yeah, just basically here, this is a quick synopsis of what, like Dave said, what a verifier does. What do verifiers do? Well, they verify that you can read the label, plate, or tag. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's polyester material, polyacrylic, aluminum, makes no difference. The verifier will accept all materials. Again, it measures the quality of the 2D barcode against ISO standards and MIL standard 130. And it evaluates that readability of the mark for contrast, consistency, quiet zone. Just a quick note about quiet zone. I sometimes get questions on this. On the 2D data matrix barcode, the quiet zone is essentially the area right around the barcode. You don't want any print or text touching that barcode because it could affect the contrast and the readability. Generally, it's like a 1/16 of an inch around the 2D barcode you want to give yourself so that the reader has the contrast necessary and it's not picking up any other marks, it's just reading that code. And lastly, if you're doing labels yourself, the verifier should be installed right next to your printing device, whether it's a thermal transfer printer or laser. So as soon as they come off the device, you can immediately run them right through the verifier. As you can see in this pic right here, it's literally done one label at a time. It's really just a few seconds for each label. There's a button on the top of this particular microscan verifier, and it does a quick scan. And the software built in the verifier will show the verification report on your computer screen, telling you whether or not it's a pass or fail. If it's a fail, obviously there's one or two things wrong. Either you have incorrect data, duplicate data, or that the quality of the mark does not meet the grade quality standard of B or better. And if that's the case, if it's a fail under any circumstance, you would need to reprint that label.